So in this class, what you're taught is that history tends to repeat itself. And by studying history meticulously and thoroughly, we can get insight into the future. So what I want to show you now is there's a direct analogy between what's happening today and what happened in Greece in about 400 BC, okay? This is Thucydides, and he wrote a very famous book called The History of the Peloponnesian War, which is what we discussed last semester. Now, the Peloponnesian War is a war between Athens and Sparta for hegemony on the Greek mainland, okay? So in 480, Athens and Sparta were best friends. They fought against Persia, which was invading the Greek mainland. And at the Battle of Salamis, the Athenians basically destroyed the Persian navy. And the Persians were forced to retreat. But there was always a threat that Persia over here would come back and invade Athens and Sparta, okay? As well, throughout the Aegean Sea are Greek islands and colonies that are afraid of Persian hegemony. So after the defeat of the Persians, the Athenians got together with these colonies and they created something called the Delian League. The Delian League is like NATO. It's a defensive alliance. If the Persians attack, then this alliance will defend together against the Persians. Now, the Athenians have the best navy at this time, and the other islands are like, we don't have a navy, but what we'll do is this, we'll give you our gold, okay? So to all these islands, they put all their wealth on a place called Delos. This is why we have the Delian League name, okay? And this money is meant as a mutual defense fund. You're not supposed to touch it unless the Persians invade, in which case you use this money to defend against the Persians. Okay, that's the idea. And this worked out well until the Athenians stole the money, right? Why? Because they wanted to create something called the Parthenon, okay, which is one of the most beautiful buildings in the world. And within the building, it's the statue of Athena. It's pure gold. Okay, so the Athenians stole all this money from Delos, from their allies, and they built this Parthenon, and the wealthy were able to steal from the Parthenon in the construction process. And so the citizens of Athens became really wealthy. It's easy money, right? And remember, easy money destroys a society. And so this is what led to the Peloponnesian War, because after Athens stole this money, it didn't apologize to its allies. In fact, it forced its allies to continue to pay tribute to Athens. Athens became a mafia state, okay? A protection racket. If you don't give us money, then we'll come invade you. And so these allies started to encourage Sparta to attack Athens, and then that's what led to the Peloponnesian War, okay? So there are three major incidents from the Peloponnesian War that I want us to focus on. The first incident is in 428 BCE, a place called Mytilene, an island. They were a former Athenian ally who refused to pay tribute. So Athenians invaded and conquered it. And now the question is, what do you do now? How do you teach these guys a lesson? How do you ensure this doesn't happen again? So one faction in Athens said, let's kill all the men. Okay? Pretty simple, right? Let's kill all the men, and then we'll spread fear among our allies, and no one will rebel against anymore. So they have a debate, and all the citizens say, let's kill them all. So they send a trireme, a ship, to the island and to give the orders to the Athenian soldiers to kill everyone. Well, not everyone, but the men, and enslave the women and the children. Okay? But after the debate, the Athenians started to talk amongst themselves, and a lot of them couldn't sleep. And they're like, this is wrong. We're Athenians. We are a democrat. We're a democracy. We fight for freedom and liberty. We can't do this to our allies. So the very next morning, the Athenian citizens get together and says, we're going to have another debate, and we're going to discuss what to do. And so they have this huge debate, and they say, no, we're Athenians. We're virtuous. We will not do this. So they send another trireme to catch up to the first trireme. And remember, the first trireme is way ahead, right? They have a day's journey ahead. So the other trireme, they work their asses off to catch up to the first trireme, and at the very last minute, they catch up. And they tell the soldiers not to kill the men, okay? And so this is the conflict between democracy and empire, right? Now, let's fast forward to 416. And now another thing happens where the Athenians are losing this war against Sparta. It's costing them a lot of money. They're forced to melt down the statue of Athena, the goddess, and use the gold to pay for this war, okay? And so, so their attitude changes. And now they're completely a mafia state. They don't care about democracy, they don't care about virtue. All they want is for their allies to pay tribute, okay? So they go invade an island called Melos. And Melos is not part of this war. They're not part of Sparta, they're not part of Athens. They're just neutral. And then the Athenians said, we don't care, you pay tribute to us. Okay? They're basically like a mafia racket now. And the Melians say, we're neutral. You have to respect our neutrality. And the Athenians say in response, right as the world goes is only in question between equals in power, while the strong do what they can and the weak suffer what they must. All right? So 12 years later, the Athenians are like, screw virtue, screw democracy, screw liberty, just give us money. All right? So remember this idea. Athenians wanted the trappings of empire. They also want to feel virtuous. And over time, as Athens became more poor, they were like, screw virtue, let's have an empire. And that's why in 415, Alcibiades, who basically is the Trump of Athens at this time, okay? He says to Athenian people, hey guys, we're losing this war against Sparta, but don't worry, let's go invade more territory. Okay, so they decided to go invade Sicily, which was very wealthy. The problem, though, is that Sicily is pretty far away, okay? Remember, this is Athens. They're fighting this huge war in the Aegean Sea against the Spartans, and they're going to go and invade Sicily for its money, okay? And it's pretty far away. And it's not really well thought out. They don't really think about how to resupply their soldiers. And eventually, their expedition gets wiped out at Syracuse, okay? So it's a disaster for the Athenians, and it turns the war in favor of the Spartans. Athens is so bad that everyone gets together. The entire world gets together to destroy Athens. The Persians, remember the Persians were the enemies of both Sparta and Athens, right? The Persians start to finance the Spartans. And the Spartans eventually lay siege to Athens and defeat the Athenians, okay? So, why is this important? Well, because history's going to repeat itself, okay? There's going to be a lot of similarities between the Peloponnesian War and American Empire today. First similarity is NATO. Remember, the Athenians had the Delian League, and the Americans have NATO, okay? And NATO is meant to be a defensive alliance. But if that's the case, then why is it that the Nord Stream pipeline got destroyed? Remember, the Nord Stream pipeline, it sends cheap gas from Russia to Germany. The German economy is use cheap Russian resources, primarily gas, manufacturing the best cars in the world and sell to China, okay? But because of this war in Ukraine, America not only limited, basically embargoed Russian gas to Germany, which destroyed the Russian economy, but some people even say that the Americans destroyed the pipeline. Okay, so the Americans are attacking their own allies. Trump has said that America should take over Greenland and Canada. Why? Because they're wealthy, they have lots of resources, and also they don't have really strong militaries, right? Trump, he's like a mafia godfather. America is behaving like a mafia system today. Now, what America is doing is it's forcing Europe to rearm itself. So this is Germany, and Germany, Britain, France, they've all announced this huge military budgets. And so you're like, okay, does this mean that we'll have World War III? Well, America doesn't think like that. America isn't like, like, let's fight Russia. America is like, how can we exploit our allies further, right? And so you can make the argument that this is not really about fighting the Russians. It's really about getting their allies, France, Germany, and Britain, to buy expensive and crappy American weapons. Remember the military-industrial complex, right? The entire point is not to fight the Russians. The Russians are just a pretext and excuse. The real purpose is to get the Europeans to buy expensive American weapons. It's really a shakedown, okay? All right, so all around the world, there's protests about what's happening in the Middle East, right? These are huge protests, protesting what's happening in Gaza today. But ultimately, it's not going to matter, all right? Why? Because America's an empire. It's a mafia state. It needs to destroy Iran in order to maintain its power, okay? So Americans want the trappings of empire. They also want to feel virtuous. That's why there's conflict right now. Over time, as America becomes poorer and poorer and more desperate, this virtue will go away. And the raw, brutal power of America will express itself throughout the world. And this will eventually lead us to the final conflict, the war between Iran and the United States. Iran has been preparing for a long time, okay? Ever since 1979, America's been preparing for a long time. This conflict is World War III. I cannot overstate how brutal this conflict will be. It will lead to fundamental changes in the world. Our lives will never be the same again. Everything that we've known in the past is now gone forever. And we have to prepare for a new future. So, I leave you with a message, okay? I know that this class has been depressing. You've been with me for a year now. It's been very depressing, okay? Because we've gone into the heart of darkness of humanity. And I know that the world looks more and more terrible. But remember this, okay? And this is my final message to you. Remember this. The greatest minds of humanity, which include Homer, Dante, Immanuel Kant, they've all told us this. They've all told us one secret of the universe, one message, which is this. The imagination is the animating force of the universe. Love is the unifying force of the universe. Okay? What this means is this. What this means is that in the darkest times, when all hope has been lost, when there's only despair, any of us, you, me, you, any one of us, can rise up, stand up, and be the light to lead humanity forward. Okay? And that's a task ahead of us if we are to save humanity in this darkest of times. Okay? So remember this. We all have the capacity to imagine. We all have the capacity to love. That's what makes us human. In the worst times, we must defend our own humanity. Okay? So that is it. Thank you so much.